This is an 82 Marshall 2203, and as you can hear, it has quite a bit of hum and buzz. This is after a correct recap job. This is with good new tubes. When you're judging these things, you have to judge it as it's actually used. So we've got to put some shielding in place, and that lowers it but does not eliminate it. Now if I plug a guitar with the volume muted on the guitar, turned off at the guitar, into the high gain input, that static is because this shielding is making intermittent contact unless I hold it down to the chassis. Now bring the preamp gain up. The master's on 10. There's white noise, but behind that white noise, there's more hum and buzz. So let's look at the things that can cause that. It's going to be ground schemes and potentially the heater supply. V1A, which is actually the second gain stage in a Marshall, has a 10K cathode resistor with no bypass cap, and that makes it extremely sensitive to picking up hum from the heater supply. This grid wire here also sometimes can pick up extra hum if it's in proximity, especially if it's parallel, which it almost is right here, to this black heater wire. Sometimes moving that around lowers the noise, and sometimes moving V2A lowers that noise. Right now it's hard to hear what's heater buzz versus what's hum because the whole thing has got that background hum. Let's see if I can lower it by doing that and turn the preamp gain up and then move this grid wire. Yeah, it's loudest there, gets better there. Do it for V2A as well. Yep. So I've turned all the levels down so we can hear ourselves think. I definitely need to move those grid connections, the ones that are in stock form running real close to those black heater wires. That's not the entire thing. I may need to go to an elevated heater supply on this, which can really help with that unbypassed 10K. I'm going to move the grid wires first, and we're going to change how the ground scheme is done because these things have ground loops. I've got a video all on that subject. I'll put the link in the description below. So let me get started on a few things and we'll check back in. Fairly minimal changes have made great improvements. So there's one added chassis ground point here. And this cathode goes to the input jack grounds and then to that point. These two cathodes go there, and a new wired ground for the volume pot goes there. The excess bus wire that was going there is still in the amp, and the bus wire is still here, so all the pot shells are at ground, but it serves no function in the grounding of these circuits anymore, which means that it is separated from the phase inverter, tone stack, and master volume grounds, which are in the negative feedback loop. A very different section of this amp as far as filtering goes as well. I've also disconnected the grounded chassis over at the phase inverter filter cap here and run a wire connecting it to the screen ground, the screen chassis connection, because the screen and the phase inverter are in the same negative feedback loop. And in this 100-watt Marshall, the diode bridge ground is tied to the reservoir cap ground rather than to the screen ground. And the net result of all that, plus moving this grid well away from these heaters and replacing the unshielded wire on this grid with the shielded run, which is shielded telescoped to the pot shell for ground over here, well away from this heater. This gives cumulatively a huge reduction in buzz and hum. Now, if I bring up the master volume right now, you will hear hum, though it's much less than it was. And now when it's shielded, it drops down to a much lower level. And if I bring the input gain up, Only when the volume is at 10 is there really noticeable hum and buzz. Below that, it's just white noise. Now, I could probably get this even better were I to make some other changes or were I to do an elevated heater supply. But I think that this is probably going to be great because very few people will be using it with both the preamp dimed and the master volume dimed. So let me adjust my mic pre-levels and let you hear what this sounds like right now with a Les Paul bridge humbucker going into it with the settings that I just kind of blindly set there. I think I'm about 1 o'clock on the master and dimed on the preamp gain. Yeah, I think that's going to do it. The noise level is dramatically lower. No big changes have been made to the amp. The only modification I've made is I drilled one small 9/32 hole right there to take a number 6 screw. It's got a stainless steel screw and a stainless steel nylock nut and one ground lug. And this breaks up that eddy current. Is this ideal? No, but it's a huge return for a very small amount of change to the otherwise vintage circuit. This cap ground being moved from on the phase inverter, that's just adding a new black wire, tucks in with all these others, and a new black wire going from the diodes to the reservoir ground, and that can be tucked away underneath as well. Pretty much invisible. So I think I just need to put a different cap here that sets the bias range where we want. This was a Timpton thing as I was experimenting. And then put the hardware back, the pots on, and button it up. And then we'll do a final playing test.